Hello, I'm Rob, and I'm nearing the end of reviewing the films of the 1930s and 40s comedy team, the Marx Brothers, featuring Groucho, Chico, and Harpo. I'm now on their 1940 film, Go West, which is one of their later films that the brothers made over at MGM, and one of the three that many consider to be their weakest.
Nobody can outshoot two-gun Quail. Boys, sweep him out of the gutter.
Why, there's nobody out there.
Well, sweep out the gutter.
Watching these movies back to back has kind of made me notice some of these arguments. When I've seen these movies maybe months or even years apart from one another, I always find myself enjoying the films. But since I've been watching them in a row with the rest of the films, I have begun to notice some things with the material that the brothers were given and the quality of the films as well. Go West is not their best film, but it does have some moments. Groucho plays S. Quentin Quayle, who is heading west when he meets con artist brothers Chico and Harpo at a train station, where they attempt to steal his money. They're heading west to look for gold, and the three become involved in a plot involving a railroad trying to go through Dead Man's Gulch. It is owned by Dan Wilson, whose granddaughter is in love with the son of their longtime enemy, the Turner family. A crooked owner of a saloon is trying to steal the deed with the help of one of the businessmen working for the railroad. So the brothers step in to help these young lovers and save the day. Go West was a sometimes weird experience for me because this is the only film where it's set in the past. Other comedy teams like Laurel and Hardy and the Three Stooges adapt well to having their films shot in different time periods because of their characters. The Stooges are very rowdy, and Laurel and Hardy are two sort of childlike people, although one is thinking that he's much smarter than the other. When they're really not. But the brothers, on the other hand, have their films set in what was then contemporary times because they can poke fun at society and places that the public are really endeared to, like the opera house, the racetrack, or even the circus. I think setting it in the West sometimes did not take advantage of what they can do. I mean, their humor is not as smart as it had been. I'm not saying that they're not funny or energetic here, but I feel like they are kind of watered down than they usually are. Another reason why this was a weird experience for me is sometimes the brothers are back in character, probably since Day at the Races, and yet sometimes they do things that are out of character. For example, the beginning has a very funny routine with Chico and Harpo trying to con Groucho out of his money. Chico has played the con artist in the past films, and it was missing in a couple of their later films. This routine kind of reminds me of the contract sequence in Night at the Opera and the ice cream sequence of Day at the Races. But later on, the brothers do another routine where they're trying to get something from the villain's safe, and Groucho and Chico let themselves get drunk by the villain's saloon girls. They would usually, not let themselves do that.
So you two gents are heading west, eh, partner? Not me, just my brother. You see, I got no money. So he's going to west, and when he gets off the train, he's going to pick up some gold and send it to me. They say the gold is laying all over the streets. Huh, Rusty? All over the streets, you find the gold.
The way he's dressed, he looks like he was laying all over the street.
Harpo does get some of her surreal humor back in a few sequences, which is always pleasant to see. It was missing in a lot of the earlier MGM films. But nitpicking aside, the brothers do get some funny scenes in here and there, as well as some amusing bits. As I mentioned, the opening con scene, in my opinion, is the best in the whole film. There's a sequence where the characters share a carriage, and at first they throw jokes around like it's an episode of the 1960s show Laugh-In, but thankfully they get a chance to cause some anarchy with the rest of the passengers. And the train climax is full of great visual and verbal gags, and the brothers' energy is definitely up there. It moves at a rapid pace, and they go up against the film's villains like they did in the other MGM films.
I'm throwing anything you hand me. Lay a hand on him. See that? Oh, yeah, pop goes the diesel. Hey, Claire! 10% for our dog. I'm so
The downside is that this is the first time that we see Chico freak out instead of keeping his cool and thinking his way out of a situation. There are some other routines, but they really don't always work out. Like there's a reading routine with Chico and Harpo reading a letter, and there's a sequence set on a Native American reservation, although there is a funny little satirical bit where Groucho mentions all the bad things the white people did to the natives. The love interests in this movie are almost non-existent, which, if you usually skip through their scenes anyway, that's not a problem. But the love interests were usually played by people with more personality, like Alan Jones, Zeppo, Kitty Carlisle, Maureen O'Sullivan. These two really don't bring much to the role, and you really don't know them well enough to, like those other love interests, to really root for them. But regardless, there is definitely more Marx Brothers stuff here in this movie to make up for it. If you treat Go West like a comedy film on its own, I think you will get some laughs out of it. But if you compare it to the team's other films, you are familiar with what they're capable of, it doesn't hold up quite as well. So for me, Go West was a mix of moments that were hilarious, amusing, down to flat and unfunny. Alright, so that's my review of the Marx Brothers' Go West. So that just leaves 3 more films: The Big Store, Night at Casablanca, and Love Happy. So if you want to leave any feedback about the Marx Brothers or about this particular movie, go right ahead. Thanks very much for watching.